The year was 8098, and the city was dying. Fever, swift and merciless, swept through the crowded streets, leaving a trail of ash and sorrow. My family, my ailing wife, Alara, and our young son, Thomas, had secured passage on the last ferry out of Blackwood Port. Our only hope was the isolated island of Havenwood, rumored to be untouched by the blight. The air on the docks was thick with the stench of sickness and desperation. Faces, gaunt and fearful, peered from cloaked figures. The ferry, the Serenity, was anything but. Its iron hull creaked, and its single smokestack belched black soot into the oppressive night sky. As we boarded, an old one-eyed deckhand muttered, "Some journeys, they take more than you give." Crossing began uneventfully. The distant lights of Blackwood Port slowly fading behind us. Kalara shivered, not just from the cold night air, but from the persistent cough that racked her frail body. Tom clung to my hand, his small face pale with worry. Then the fog descended, not a gentle mist, but a thick, hungry shroud that swallowed the stars, the moon. And eventually, even the ferry's own bow. The distant chug of the engine became muffled, then faltered, sputtering into a strained, rhythmic gasp before dying altogether. We were adrift, blind and vulnerable in an ocean of white. A collective groan rippled through the few passengers. The captain, a burly man named O'Malley, cursed under his breath. Engine trouble. Hold fast, folks. We'll have her running directly." But his voice lacked conviction. Sila. The silence that followed was deeper than any eye had ever known, broken only by the lapping of unseen waves against the hull and the frantic beating of my own heart. It was then that the whispers began, soft, almost imperceptible at first, like wind through dead leaves. They seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere, slithering through the dense fog. Lost. So lost. Join us. Release the pain, Tom whimpered, pressing himself against my leg. "Father, do you hear that?" Alara's eyes, glazed with fever, widened. "They're here. The ones who walk between worlds." The whispers grew, coalescing into distinct, agonizing groans. And then, a sound that made my blood run cold. The faint, rhythmic scraping of bare feet on wet wood, seemingly coming from the empty upper deck. Captain O'Malley, his face now ashen, gripped his lantern tighter. "Who's up there? Identify yourselves." No answer. Save for a long, drawn-out sigh that seemed to drain the very warmth from the air. A figure began to materialize through the fog, just at the edge of the lantern's glow. It was impossibly tall and gaunt, draped in what looked like tattered, waterlogged burial shrouds. Its head was tilted at an unnatural angle, and where a face should have been, there was only a featureless, dark void. Panic erupted among the passengers. A woman screamed, a man began to pray. But the figure merely drifted closer, its form undulating in the mist, leaving a trail of cold dread. As it drew nearer, a sickly, sweet stench filled the air, the scent of decay, and something else, something terribly familiar. The smell of the city, the smell of the fever. Klura's cough intensified, a wrenching sound in the terrifying quiet. The figure paused, its featureless face seeming to turn towards her, a chilling recognition in its non-existent eyes. See. Its whispers intensified, no longer from everywhere, but focused, directed. Come, join us. The suffering ends. I clutched Alara and Thomas, backing away, but there was nowhere to go. We were trapped on a metal coffin, adrift in a sea of silent horror. The deckhand, the one with the missing eye, suddenly dropped his lamp, his hand flying to his throat as he gagged. He began to cough, a deep, rattling sound, identical to the cough that had plagued our city and was now consuming my wife. The figure reached out a long, spectral arm, its form becoming clearer, more horrifying. Its tendrils seemed to shimmer with tiny, black motes, swirling like dust motes in sunlight, but I knew they were something far more sinister. They were the very essence of the plague, the captain. Finally breaking his stupor, grabbed an axe from a nearby rack. "Get back, you demon, he roared, swinging wildly at the approaching apparition. The axe passed through the spectral form without resistance, striking the railing with a dull thud. The figure continued its relentless drift, unfazed. My wife's breathing grew shallow. Her hand, intertwined with mine, felt colder than the surrounding fog. The whispered promises of release, of an end to suffering, seemed to coil around us, insidious and tempting. The figure paused directly before us, its dark void of a face looming over Alara. A faint, sickly glow emanated from its form, and I saw, reflected in the wet deck, a swirling pattern within its being. Not just shadows, but tiny, swirling forms, like microscopic organisms, multiplying, consuming. It wasn't just a ghost. It was the embodiment of the plague itself, a sentient sickness, seeking its final victims. The last thing I heard before the world tilted and went black was Alara's final, shuddering breath, followed by a chorus of triumphant whispers rising from the fog-shrouded deck of the Serenity. The ferry had found its final passengers, B, and the journey had ended not on a hopeful shore, but in the cold embrace of the inevitable.